The views and ideas presented on this program are those of the people who express them. That will be mostly me. They do not in any way, shape, or form represent those of Sky Cable 13, Telemedia, and or its employees, okay? I'm about to rock. It's the KLH show, starring me, KLH. I'm telling you, you better hold on to something. Let's go!
What's going on, Waterbury meat? Blah!
Scene one, Apple, take two.
What's going on, Waterbury? It's me, your man KLH, back in your TV screen, here to save the world 30 minutes at a time. I know that you folks out there have plenty of viewing choices, and you made this one, and I appreciate you for that choice. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, want to be a guest on the show, whatever, hit me at the website, KLHOUD1 at Comcast.net. This show, I'm going to be doing a lot of reading, so it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be stumbling around with a couple of books and papers and whatnot, and I found it. My page in this book. So I'm going to get into a subject that I talked about a couple of years ago, and I'm going to tell you where I'm at now, and hopefully I'll get some feedback on it. Gay marriage. Back in the news again. A couple of years ago, as I mentioned, I covered this topic on the show, and I was with a friend of mine, very smart guest, Sheila Van Garlington. I believe that's the full hyphenated name. And she got me to concede, which is not an easy feat, that as far as gay marriage, at the end of the day, it really doesn't take anything away from me if gays get married. I had to admit that was true. It is still true. However, my position has kind of, I guess you could say, devolved or revolved, or maybe evolved, but it was some evolving up in there. I wanted to first talk about what marriage literally is, the definition of it, and who better to go to? Oh, man, it's so hard to get out of this couch, I gotta tell you. Mr. Webster, the New World Dictionary, College Edition. One thing to note is that this dictionary was published in 1979. So you flip through the pages and come to marriage. And it says the state of being married, relation between husband and wife, married life, wedlock, matrimony, etc. And it goes on to say marriage refers to the state of or relation between a man and woman who have become husband and wife. And then it refers you to the word marry. Marry says, it says to join as husband and wife, unite in wedlock. To join a man to a woman as her husband, or a woman to a man as his wife. To take as husband or wife, take in marriage. To join closely or intimately, to get married, to take a husband or wife. So, literally, the definition of marriage is a union between a husband and wife. Now we know that marriage historically in this country has had and throughout the world legal and religious implications. It gives you certain legal rights. Marriage is typically or certainly often performed as a religious ceremony, but with that religious ceremony you are afforded legal rights and a legal status. I want to get into some of the historical events that have happened as this issue of gay marriage has evolved in this country. First of all, back in ancient times, clearly gay marriage or marriage between people of the same sex was banned. It was just something that just totally was banned. Certain countries had written laws banning it. Others had an understanding that it was banned or not allowed in their cultures. So I did a little research on the good old internet and Wikipedia and looked up the history of same-sex marriage. And I'm going to pick up at 1970, where there was a case in Minnesota between two gentlemen, Jack Baker and Michael McConnell. They applied for a marriage license, and until 1973, there had been no definition of marriage in any statute in any state in the United States. However, countless courts had ruled that common law presumed that marriage was between a man and a woman. And so Minnesota said, you can't have a marriage license. So they said, well, we're going to go to the Supreme Court. Yeah. And so they went to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court denied their request to be heard. And so they could not get a marriage license in Minnesota, Jack and Michael. 1979 in the Netherlands, they adopt a unregistered cohabitation law, which was the first law in any country in the world that provided for a same-sex civil union. Fast forward to 2000. Howard Dean, the governor of Vermont, ruled that same-sex, he signs a bill allowing civil unions because the state Supreme Court had ruled that same-sex couples were entitled to all the rights of heterosexual couples. And so they became the first state in this country to give full marriage rights to same-sex couples. 2003, Massachusetts orders the legislature to open marriage up to same-sex couples. 2005, Connecticut jumps in. Jody Rell signs a bill allowing for same-sex civil unions. And in that same year of 2005, Michael Bloomberg of New York signs a bill allowing same-sex unions. And around the same time, or throughout all these times, actually, there were different states who were signing bills into law defining marriage specifically as being between a man and a woman, and some states outright banning same-sex unions. So there is still a lot of diverse opinions in laws in this country regarding same-sex unions. And up to our modern day of 2012, our president, Barack Obama, becomes the first sitting president to say he supports gay marriage. And so that is a little bit of history. And the reason why, bear with me here, the reason why I wanted to talk about the history and the definition of marriage is because I think it's an important foundation for any kind of discussion about the topic. Because marriage has been defined specifically as being between a man and a woman until very recently, you can find some very modern. I looked up on dictionary.com, and they have, as I believe, a secondary definition of marriage between same sex. So it has evolved. I just want to be completely open about the things I've uncovered. However, historically, marriage has been defined as being between a man and woman. I don't think there can be any kind of legitimate claim that marriage historically has been only for men and women, has been instituted and created specifically for men and women. So here goes my position. I think that it is unfair as a matter of principle for the gay movement, the gay constituency, to bust in the doors of something that was never intended for them and claiming to have rights to it. I just think it's unfair. I think it's exactly the same as if, and I remember hearing about these things some years ago of a boy's parents, suing the Girl Scouts because he wants to become a Girl Scout. Girl Scouts was never meant for boys. The Boy Scouts was never meant for girls. It's not for you. There's Girl Scouts for the girls. That's where you belong if you're a girl. Marriage has been defined and created for men and women. Not men and men or women and women. And to be clear, I am absolutely against any kind of prejudice against, any kind of persecution against, any kind of denial of rights to live fully and happily in this country, as far as gay folks are concerned. I fully support their rights to be happy and to do what they want to do. They're adults. They have every right. However, when it comes to marriage, it's something that was never intended for them. Now, I hear people on TV talking about, you're denying our rights to be who we are. No, we're not. No, the country is not. You have every right to be gay and to love your gay partner. I've also heard comparisons to the civil rights movement in this country, which I personally, and I know a lot of African Americans, find offensive. And I find it offensive because our Constitution from its inception specifically includes everybody. And by the way, the Constitution does not provide for marriage, but it says that all men are created equal. And it talks about the pursuit of happiness and whatnot. I'm not a constitutional dude, but I know that much. The point is that, unlike marriage, the Constitution included everyone. That was one of the beautiful things about the United States Constitution, was its inclusiveness. And so when years later, Jim Crow laws and all the slavery bullcrap came in, it was in defiance of our Constitution. It was clearly in defiance of our Constitution. And it was because of the Constitution that some years later that laws were passed to reaffirm our rights as United States citizens, as far as black folks are concerned. It is very different with gay marriage. Marriage from its inception was designed for, instituted for men to be with women, and that's it. So I think that gays have the right to I think that they should have the rights that everybody else has, with the exception of the right to marry. I just think it's not fair. And it is not a necessary component of living in the United States or living in the world to have the title of I'm married. So I think that that there is no denial of any rights set out in the Constitution because gay people can't get married. With that said, I come full circle to the conversation I had with my friend Sheila a couple of years ago on this show. I will admit that for gay people to get married, it doesn't take anything away from me. I don't think that'll undermine our human civilization. I don't think that it will affect anything that I am going to be doing. And so if it becomes the law of the land everywhere, you know, it's no skin off of my nose, which is a funny term. It really doesn't matter to me that much. I wanted to talk about it because it's in the news. I do have an opinion about it, but I'm not willing to fight against gays becoming married. Although I do have this opinion, you heard it, I'd be more than glad to hear from you folks out there on this topic. So I also want to mention about our President Barack Obama that I think that he was being very opportunistic when he had an interview with Robin Roberts about his evolved stand on gay marriage. I think that really what's going on is he's reaching out to very liberal-minded voters and to the gay constituency to get support for his re-election campaign. He could have said this before, he could have said it after the election, but he said it now, I think, to try to get votes. Call me a cynic if you want, but that's what I think. So, that's my gay thing. All right now. Again, I'm reading some more. It's a reading show. I wanted to talk about a case down in Jacksonville, Florida that has just been concluded, but it's been in the news. It's a very interesting situation. A young woman named Marrisa Alexander was sentenced to 20 years mandatory in federal prison for firing a warning shot into the wall to scare off her husband. 20 years in prison, did not hit anyone. As far as I can tell in the research that I did, there was never even any testimony that she intended to hit anyone. Her husband had stated that it was clear knowledge that her husband was abusive toward his other female relationships. He was violent towards her. And on this particular occasion, according to testimony, he had read a text message off her phone, her communicating something or other with her ex-husband. Her current husband got pissed off and, according to her testimony, threatened to kill her. She got afraid. She ran out of the house to go drive off forgot her keys, came back in for the keys, picked up her gun. I don't recall reading whether or not that gun was legally registered, but I didn't see anything about her being charged with having an unregistered gun. So I'm going to assume that it was properly registered. So she went back in the house to get her keys. Her husband's coming at her, at which time she grabs her gun, fires a shot off into the wall to warn him to fall back, which results in her being arrested for aggravated assault. Now, it's an interesting situation because it's Florida. And if you'll recall, there's a very hot case that's going on now of Trayvon Martin. And George Zimmerman, the man who killed Trayvon Martin, is using the so-called stand your ground law, which is a Florida state law that states that you do not have to retreat. You may stand your ground and use deadly force if you believe that your life is under threat. This young lady, Marrisa Alexander, attempted to use this defense. She was not allowed, she was not given any leeway on that defense. She ultimately was convicted. Interestingly, the same woman who is prosecuting the case against George Zimmerman, Angela Corey, was prosecuting this case. Now, I don't know where her head is at. I've heard talk about racism, and if you've watched me enough, you know I don't throw the racism card around easily. However, this woman is black. George Zimmerman is not. However, when you think about racism, Angela Corey is actually advocating for the victim, Trayvon Martin, who is black. So I don't know how you use the racism card there. However, Angela Corey, the state's attorney, says the reason she charged aggravated assault was because the gun was fired into a wall beyond which there were a couple of kids, and that it was an extremely dangerous situation. Critics of the state prosecutor, Angela Corey, said she overcharged, that Marrisa never should have been charged with aggravated assault. So the case went to court. Marrisa tries to use stand your ground. It doesn't work. The jury deliberates for 12 minutes, convicts her. The judge now has to sentence. Here's the problem. In Florida, they have what is called a 10-20 life law, and it stipulates for certain felonies, aggravated assault being one of them, that the judge has no discretion whatsoever. That if a person is convicted of a felony which falls into the category of this 10-20 life, that he must sentence her to 20 years in prison. That's what he had to do by law. So now you have a situation where a woman who didn't kill anybody, who didn't shoot anybody, who it seems specifically tried to avoid killing somebody, it seems as though she was trying to defend herself in a non-lethal way. She now has to do 20 years in prison. Now, as far as, again, any research that I have found, there has not been the NRA coming to her rescue the way they came to George Zimmerman's rescue. All these advocates for the stand your ground law have not come to this woman's rescue. Is it because she's black? Maybe. I just find it interesting that when a black person wants to invoke this law as justification for an action they took, that all the advocates, all the gun right advocates and all these other people, they don't come to her rescue. They don't come to her aid. And so now she is serving a mandatory, it's kind of incredible actually. She's serving a mandatory 20-year prison sentence. So it just goes to show how erratically and how unevenly laws are applied in this country, and we still have a lot of work to do to fix that situation. There it is. So here we are at the end of another show. I'm up on the edge of the couch because it's too hard to get up when I'm back in the couch. And you know what it is at the end of every show? We gotta get our drinky drink on. Word up. And you know what it is? If you have any questions, concerns, if you're mad at me for what I had to say about gay marriage, if you want to be a guest on the show, any kind of commentary, as long as it's respectful, be glad to read it on the show. Hit me up on the website. Boom! KLH at Comcast.net. I've been drinking a Diet Pepsi, so I might as well use that as the foundation for the drink. Get a little bit of that in there. Might as well pour it in. Work with this for a while. And I'm going to use a little, so I want to finish up this bottle, although I won't finish it all in this one drink. A little Kuya. Yeah! That is fusion rum. Anybody who has a problem with me drinking can, well, you take a chill pill. You know what it is. May I live to be 100 years, and may you live to be 100 years in a day. Peace. Yodeling.